So I went to college about 100 miles away from New York City, where I live now, where I was born, where I grew up. And one of the great sort of luxuries, one of the good things about going to college so close to home is that when you need money, as college kids often do, you can actually go home and get it relatively easy. Now, this was back in the day when it wasn't as easy to transfer money to people. You know, we didn't have sort of the online apps or any of that stuff. So you either had to have someone mail you a check or pick up cash in person. And for folks whose parents were in a cash business, like my dad who drove a taxi, or like my friend's parents who had a moving company, that was usually accomplished when you did a visit. So one afternoon, it turns out one of my friends we heard he was going to the city. He was going to get some money from his parents. You know, so we just, he had a car. So we were just gonna, another friend had a car. So we were just gonna troop down, spend the evening in the city, and then head back up. So we did it. We headed down. He got his money. We stopped on 8th Street in the Village. We got something to eat. We looked at leather bags, all the things you do when you're a teenager and you don't have a lot of responsibilities and so on. And so we turned around and head back up to the city at the end of the night. Up to college at the end of the night. And we're on the road on the Merritt Parkway, which at that time could get pretty dark in certain stretches as you got farther and farther away from New York. So we get about a half hour, 20 minutes away from school, just past New Haven, and we get pulled over. Now, we're a bunch of black guys in a car late at night in Connecticut. So we are being very intentional about how we drive. We had enough experience by then. The whole brown boy bad Negroes in a car paradigm was something we had, you start reacting to that when you're 14, 15. So by the time you're 18, 19, there are moments where you just have to be on your P's and Q's, and that's one of them. We get pulled over. We weren't speeding. And we know it's time to chill. So there's an officer behind us, a car behind us, and nothing happens. Several minutes pass. Another police officer car pulls in front of us. And so now that's not as usual, not as common. So now we're definitely wary. Now, a few more minutes pass, and then 2 officers get out, one on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. 2 more are behind the car. So, we're a little concerned. They don't ask for license and registration. They just go straight to the driver when they start talking, and they say, step out of the vehicle. So it's late at night, it's cold, it's Connecticut, dark stretch of road. We don't fight. He gets out, and we don't see him again. He's just gone. So the rest of us are sitting in the car waiting for the other shoe to fall. And so the other police officer says, he asked the guy on the passenger side, let me get some ID. So he gives him his ID, and I think whoever that driver was, whoever that person was, he didn't have a license. We're all city kids, and not everybody has a license. Not everybody drives. So, but he had his college ID. So he gave him his ID, and police officer takes it, and so he asks him his question: where you headed? Where are you from? Where are you going? Blah, blah, blah. What you been doing this evening? Tells him the story. Asks the second person in the car, let me see some ID. Gives him his ID. I think he had a license. Gives him his license. Where you headed? Where you're from? What have you been doing this evening? Blah, blah, blah. So by the time you get to the third person, we know the drill. So we're trying to say, hey, we're together. We all are going to the same school. We're heading back. Not hearing it. They still make us all go through it, and they start being really abusive. It's like, what you doing? Well, you asking questions, and they got jokes and with each other, and they're laughing at us. They have us get out the car, they search us, and have us kneel by the side of the car, by the side of the road, back to the highway. So during the search, like I said, my friend was going to the city to get money from his parents. they find he has a fanny pack and he has all this cash in it. And they go into that, where'd you get all this money, blah, 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 why you have all this money? Not realizing that, his parents moved boxes to get that money, hustled, or my dad, if I had all the money in my pocket was from my dad picking up fares. You know what I mean? We're allowed to have their sacrifice in our pockets, but not to them, and not to the police. And so they let us sit after a while, and then finally comes back, and we realized that there are 6 cops, 3 police cars. He'd been in the car behind us, and they search that car. I mean, they take out the spare. They thoroughly search the car. I don't need to go into detail on that. They don't find anything, and they don't find anything on us except for the cash in our pockets, especially the cash in one of my friend's pockets. And they let us go with a citation for, the car had a bench seat, and our front seat had 3 passengers in it, which I think at the time wasn't illegal yet, but they said he didn't have a seat belt that was proper, because he didn't have a shoulder belt. I don't remember. It wasn't illegal, but it was a problem. And so they gave us a citation for that, which wasn't even like a money ticket. And they let us go. And so we continued on. We went back up to school, and we didn't talk about it. And I hope I didn't say the driver's name, because he might be embarrassed, but we were terrified, and he cried, and it was tears of rage, tears of whatever, release. And so we get up to school, and we don't talk about it. I talked about it with one guy since, but we've never spoken about it since, except for this. There was the Rodney King beating happened maybe 2 months later, 3 months later, and there was a teach-in/speak-in at our campus center. And the guy, our driver, he gave this speech where he got up and he talked about how angry it made him, how frustrated. And he was like, just how we could understand why people would want to riot. And he's like, I would want to tear up my own stuff. And it stayed with me because I remember feeling that way. And we tell those stories when I speak. The one friend I do keep in touch with, he lives here in Harlem. We're friends. Our wives are friends. Our kids are friends. They both, anyway. We talk about it. But when we told that story, we usually tell that story comedically, making ourselves the butt of a joke. And I don't know whether that's self-care or self-therapy or the way that we cope. I don't want to, boo-hoo, woe is me. But we rarely talk about the rage, what it's like to be, brown boy mad, and the shame. It's embarrassing. I don't know why. Like, you're never being a victim of violence or someone treats you poorly isn't something that you should feel shame about, but we do. We don't talk about it without shame.